Back day 2 of Freetrail's trailgating coverage of the Black Canyon and Tarawera double golden ticket race weekend. Tonight, we are going to go super deep on the Tarawera 102K, sort of the biggest and most iconic race down in New Zealand on the North Island in a beautiful town called Rotorua. Joining me tonight to break it all down are two fantastic co-hosts, both from Mammoth Lakes, California, our returning champion, Mr. Tim Tollefson. Tim, welcome back, buddy.
Good to see you. I'm thinking I might need to move into your neighborhood pretty soon.
Yeah, we were just talking about the impending blizzard that's about to bury you guys and your neighbor as well. Dani Moreno joining us for the first time on a trailgating program since I think maybe Broken Arrow of last year. Dani, great to have you back. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm super excited to be here.
Amazing. Ethan, it sounds like maybe we have an echo, so he's going to troubleshoot that, but we're going to launch right into it. And if you can, Ethan, while you're troubleshooting, we got to start with the meme of the day here. Okay. This is a callback to yesterday's show. This is from Rambling Runner, our friend Matt Chittum, who's also a very successful and prominent podcaster in the space, who in the first minute of listening to the show yesterday was assaulted as a Patriots fan with Tim referencing Drake May as a Make-A-Wish kid after he lost the Super Bowl. Matt Chittum, this bit of comic relief here today. We certainly appreciate it. Tim, do you want to defend yourself here as the meme of the day here to kick off the show?
Absolutely. So Lindsay and I have made a pact that in 2026, we're going to try something new each week. And this week we were going to do sports. So we watched the Super Bowl, which we haven't done in probably a decade. And our hearts were just breaking for that kid. We're like, why are the announcers so mean to him? Like, and just when it felt like things couldn't get worse, it was getting worse. And it just was breaking our heart. But it was good to see he did get a couple drives towards the end and like redeemed. And it's just like, hey, you're 23 years old, big career ahead of you. I felt for him deeply, but I couldn't help but think, like, who gave this kid his wish and put him in the Super Bowl? So
yeah, I mean, Patriots fans have been blessed for the last several decades with their football teams, and Drake May, only a second-year quarterback. The sky is the limit. An MVP candidate in the NFL this year, fell short in the Super Bowl. Sorry, our condolences to Matt Chittum, the Rambling Runner, but thank you for this comic relief. And of course, the Bad Bunny reference is also Super Bowl specific for those who tuned in and watched. Before we launch into it, and before we bring Dani in as well, and I do want to get her to comment on this, there is a bit of breaking news on Freetrail's side. People may have seen that today a press release went out from Trailcon that Travis Tygart, the CEO of USADA, is going to be coming to Trailcon. Registration is also open now at trailconference.com. People can go register for our great conference, trade show, expo that we hold up there in the Palisades Tahoe region in between Broken Arrow and Western States. Travis Tygart probably needs no introduction to most people. He's one of the leading anti-doping figures in all of sports, and especially endurance sports. He's famous for tackling scandals like Balco, U.S. Postal Service, even like the Russian state-sponsored doping scandal that went down probably about a decade ago. So a leading figure in the space. He's going to be coming and delivering a keynote at Trailcon. And then he will be engaged in conversation with our very own Tim Tollefson on stage. Tim, say a few words about this, this important kind of moment in the sport, the work that you're doing with the PTRA.
I think it's a moment of inflection, which is a positive thing for where we're at in trail and ultra. And anybody that has not listened, and actually it's topical to today's conversation as we run through the top contenders at Tarawera. But, Dylan, you did a fantastic interview with Beth McKenzie I think it was the end of last year, but you released it just last month. I would encourage people to go listen to that. But it's, as we are, moving trail and ultra towards more professionalization and kind of standardizing our practices and procedures and just kind of trying to level everything up. The continued topic of anti-doping and an out of competition network. And, these things are top of mind. And so having someone like Travis, who, as you said, has led some of the largest and most important kind of like bus in sports, it's an honor that we're going to be able to have him in our little world, but it's also very important because something that your conversation with Beth touched on is, there's a transition period as a sport sort of adopts these, more standardized practices, and, having him as hopefully someone that will help guide us as we're working with, WADA and USADA and others. I think it's going to be something very informative for stakeholders, which would be brands, races, series, athletes, agents, coaches, all these different, stakeholders really need to have the messaging out there. So I think it's going to be an awesome keynote. I'm excited to have a chat with him. I'll be in over my head, but also, at the PTRA, I head up the anti-doping working group. And so we are working closely with, UTMB World Series and others just to kind of start pushing this stuff out in a more standardized way. So it's going to be awesome. I highly encourage people to engage with us throughout it.
Grateful for you, man. And I couldn't think of a better person to lead that dialogue with the great Travis Tygart. Dani, anything you want to say on the meme or on this important breaking news before we get to the Tarawera breakdown?
I was pretty sure the Seahawks were going to win. Sorry, not sorry. So seeing that meme come out kind of made me chuckle. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think Tim is the perfect person to be interviewing Travis, and we're just at a nexus in our sport. I mean, considering that Broken Arrow is putting up the biggest prize purse in the world, and that's happening the week before, athletes who are participating want to know that there is a fair and level playing field as these prize purses get bigger and bigger. And even just this week, a couple days ago, Golden Trail announced that they are going to start doing out of competition testing. And so I think it's important for, a variety of stakeholders like Tim was listing to be present at a talk like this, so they can hear it from the horse's mouth themselves of like, how does this system work? How is it going to look going forward? And how is it going to affect potentially, our growing community of trail runners? So I'm pretty excited, and huge congrats to Trailcon.
Great. Thanks for that, Dani. So a quick detour to start our show, but of course we are here to do a full breakdown, especially of the Tarawera 102K golden ticket race, like I said, happening in Rotorua, the North Island of New Zealand. Dani's also going to give us a quick 50K preview near the end, but we'll focus on the 102K long coverage binge here. If you missed last night's show, is the top 10 storylines of Black Canyon Tarawera. We're going to focus just on Tarawera, talk about the course, the conditions, the contenders here tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night, 5 p.m. to do the same thing for Black Canyon. Thursday, we're going to be back to do a Black Canyon 50K preview, and we'll make our sort of final predictions. That'll probably be a fun and shorter show on Thursday. Friday, because it's going to be Saturday in New Zealand, so Friday evening we'll be live doing an instant recap from the results of Tarawera, so you're not going to want to miss that. Cancel your plans on Friday, and then we'll conclude our coverage on Saturday with the Black Canyon instant recap show. And just a reminder, as I said last night, that show will not be live because, of course, Aravaipa / Mountain Outpost will still be live doing the full race broadcast, and we don't want to interfere with that amazing work that they do. Before we launch into it, go play fantasy, pick 10 deep for Black Canyon 100K, 5 deep for Tarawera, 5 deep for Black Canyon 50K, 3 races coming up this weekend for your chance to win great prize packages from Freetrail, and also some fresh new kicks from ACG, that ACG Ultrafly. Speaking of which, big thank you to ACG for supporting our coverage here all week. Check out allconditionsgear.com. Finally, get in the chat. Let us know where you're watching. Throw any comments or questions in there. We do have Travis on the back end too, who has the ability to funnel great contributions from the chat into tonight's show. So we're going to do our best to do that. And also, if you don't mind, subscribe to the channel. As we always do, we're going to talk about the course first. So Ethan, if you don't mind pulling up our animation here, what our viewers are about to see is a course flyover from the three-peat defending champion, Dan Jones, the pride of New Zealand. This is his Strava file from last year. There are slight deviations between last year's course and this year's course, but we'll get to that in a minute. Maybe just starting quickly, Dani, why don't you just walk us through, like, if you were pinning a race on this weekend, how would you be thinking about the course specifically? Like, how would you have been preparing for it and thinking about it strategically?
Yeah, my first thoughts when I think about Tarawera is that it's fast. Most of it is runnable, even just, hearing from fellow friends that have taken to it and watching videos online, like it's all pretty nice, what we'd probably in California called California single track or California carpet. There are routes here and there, but I honestly think the X factor of Tarawera is the tree coverage and the humidity. You kind of can get baked in the tree sometimes, even if there's a little bit of rain, and the fact that there's not a lot of air flowing through those really dense New Zealand forests, I think is the thing that you have to strongly consider when you're training. So for athletes who are coming from more dry climates or cold climates, it's like, how can you potentially replicate that humidity without having to go live in New Zealand for, weeks or months beforehand? And also that all the climbs appear to be quite fast. So it's not slow climbing. You are running up little to no power hiking if you're looking to be competitive up front.
Tim, anything you want to add there? If you were competing for a golden ticket, what would you think about the course? And maybe what would the final like 6 or 8 weeks of your training look like to get ready for a course like this?
So it definitely, talking to people, it does fit that bill of fight, kind of forested roads, California carpet. I'm curious what the changes are. I didn't look into that, to see compared to last year, but, from what I can tell, I exported the GPX, it's about 8,000 feet of climbing over 63 miles. And, really the first 22 miles are pretty cruiser. There's an 8-mile stretch where you climb 800 feet. So it's, very gradual, almost like you're on an old railway trail. But as Dani said, like kind of that second half is where it's going to beat you up a bit more. But I think looking at, we'll talk about the weather, but it's a very runnable race. And as we dive into the fields, we have some heavy hitters that can like turn things over. So it's going to serve those that can, keep the cadence high, keep their heart rate low. And so in the final few weeks, I would be tuning up and sharpening like I would for a road marathon, honestly.
Wow. Hey, Ethan, if you don't mind, bring that animation up just one more time. You don't have to play it, but I just want to flag a couple of things here for our viewers, if you don't mind. So again, this is Dan Jones' winning file, and it was a course record. But like, just look at the mile paces there in the first dozen miles of the race last year. It is sort of wide, dirt, forested service road there. So you can definitely open up. You can see the elevation. It's not like there's a lot of climbing and descending, but they're on their horse early in the race. And then if you look up near the top, the average pace for Dan Jones for the 100K, 6 minutes, 48 seconds. It's ridiculously fast. And you brought up something that I thought might be it's just an interesting commonality between the two races we're covering this weekend, Tarawera and Black Canyon, and that the first half of both races are pretty fast and the back halves of the races in general, it's the harder part of the race, right? So they're back heavy in terms of their difficulty, even if both courses are very, very runnable. All right, Ethan, you can take down this animation.
Yeah. Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, could I point out one more thing?
Yeah, please.
On the course.
Bring it back
if
up.
You could pull that back up.
Putting our producer to the test here. Go ahead, Dani.
So if you could scroll down to mile like 25 on the splits.
It's like a screen cap.
Oh.
Yeah, but tell us.
Okay. Well, if you're at home and you check out this awesome file, something that really stood out to me, like why Dan potentially is a 3-time champion, is there's a long climb that starts at roughly mile 25. And it seems to be like a very key part of the course. And if you look at Dan's pace and gap pace, he actually turns it on that climb, which I found super fascinating. That if you're just kind of rolling in a couple days before, you maybe, hit a wall at that point, you got out too fast, but it made it very evident that he knew what he was doing with his pacing. And just another reason why this run was so spectacular. And so this year, that climb, when you get to the top, goes through a slightly different part of the course. And for many of us who do races with a lot of climbing, it's like, yes, maybe you're climbing and you're still in it, but what happens after the climb? Do you hit that lactic wall? Do you know how to still navigate through windy terrain, etc.? Can you push after the climb? And so that's one of the parts that I think will be super curious this year, as that is the course change is after the climb.
Great contributions, Dani. And I want to come back to a couple of things that you said. Ethan, if you don't mind pulling up that bird's eye view of the course, here we can see the slight deviation between the 2026 course and the 2025 course. The red line is what the runners will be doing this year. The blue line is what Dan Jones, Ruth Croft, and the rest of the 2025 crop did last year. It's roughly a 10K difference Most of it comes sort of in that middle section of the course. You do see a slight deviation there in the early miles too. So more or less the same course. What they say is that new section is basically more forested double track, whereas I think last year is kind of wide open and faster service road. So in general, I would say this year's course would be expected to be slightly slower than last year, just based on the footing. We'll get to the weather here in a little bit, but more or less, we're not comparing apples and oranges. More or less, the runners should be expecting fairly similar terrain and underfoot conditions. Ethan, if you don't mind just pulling up that course profile quickly before we move off talking about it. Dani, this is sort of what you were talking about. So that mile 25 climb, that's kind of where Dan seemed to get on his horse and gain some of the separation that he then held to the finish in the women's race last year. We'll remember Beth McKenzie was, I think, in the lead until sort of the lower stretches of that climb before Ruth Croft and Caitlin Fielder ended up overtaking her and then engaged in a duel themselves. Tim, maybe coming back to you, looking at this, any other things that come to mind here? Obviously, our viewers will see that it is a net uphill course, even though it is fast. I don't know if there's anything, anything else to mind.
So in that climb that Dani is referencing, it climbs almost 1,900 feet over 6 miles. So, you're averaging over 600 feet per mile, 300 feet per mile, which is, a pretty steady climb. I think it is about almost 800 feet more net uphill than downhill. And as Dani referenced also, like immediately after that, you have that good steady kind of decline right before another big one. So it'll be interesting to see how people do recover on that. And I think it's like what we talked about with Black Canyon. It's very much like you can get yourself into a hole early if you maybe go out a little too aggressive. And if you don't have the legs or the strength to pull it in the final 50K, you can really kind of, pay back what you may have banked up early. And so seeing this, also, if you have legs, that final 10K, it looks to be a net downhill and then pancake flat. And that's where, if you didn't dig yourself too much of a deficit, either in that first 30 miles or getting through the hills, I think that's where you could really have, sort of a race to the finish. I think it'll come down to who has the ability to turn over late at that point.
Yes. And especially last year, the 50K races were really close, or at least on the men's side. I think Hayden Hawks wasn't able to get away from Robbie Simpson until those closing flat miles. Just to paint the picture for the audience, because I have been to Tarawera 3 times myself. I've done the 100K twice, and I did the 50K last year. It is such a great race. People should go and do Tarawera. They call it the Big Friendly for a reason. It's a very, apt description for the race. It's really forgiving trails. It's soft ground. It's non-technical. Usually the weather's okay. We'll get to this year's conditions here in just a second, but it actually does have kind of a Northern California feel to it. And even in those last few miles, you're running through redwoods. And then when you break back into Rotorua, you enter into this sort of sulfuric volcanic landscape. You can smell the geysers that are around, and it does have a very unique character to it, a very worthwhile race that people should put on their bucket list. And even though it is 100K early in the season, like I said, it's a pretty forgiving 100K. Okay. Anyway, moving on. The conditions this year, which I've now referenced a couple of times, are going to be a little bit different. Thank you, Ethan, for pulling this up. What we're seeing here is the forecast for Saturday there in Rotorua. Kind of a strange day, real feel of 79 degrees, pretty warm, but it's going to rain an inch and a half. Dani, coming back to you, how would you be approaching things strategically with these weather conditions?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Hawaii for those who have been out there. That's immediately what I think of. I also imagine that it's probably going to be quite slippery in some areas, just trying to get some close views of videos and clips online and stuff like that. It would probably be a mix similar to Marin, where it's like some areas will be slippery, some areas will be probably super tacky, those that are protected by the trees. But I just wouldn't underestimate how warm it is. Like, don't confuse rain with that being your cool down. Like, you should seriously be, considering a couple wipe downs here and there. Maybe some ice cubes in your flask is probably what I would do, just to keep that core temp lower.
Man, I look at that forecast and I just start to melt. It's my kryptonite. So maybe like we talked about yesterday with, Trans Gran Canaria, I'm almost already starting to get sweaty. I think this could favor some of the Asia Pacific athletes and, a lot of the North American athletes that are coming from maybe a winter climate, depending on where they're at. As we mentioned in the past, this may have been one of the relatively easier golden ticket chases. But as we are seeing more and more of those Asian athletes take a crack on the world scene, I think that they are much more positioned to do well in this type of climate because it's what they're used to. So I think it favors the hometown heroes and the visiting Asian athletes.
Tim, you and I are very much on the same wavelength, but I don't know. To me, this is hilarious, right? A very strange day to be racing in. Usually when it rains an inch and a half, you're thinking about putting your waterproof jacket on. Not when it's 80 degrees at the same time. So this will be a tropical rainstorm for the Tarawera 100K runners this year. And it's funny, like I said, I've done the 100K twice, and I did get a day like this in 2018 where it was a bit of a deluge there for the few days leading up to the race, and then on race day itself, and then mercifully and ironically opened up into beautiful sunshine the day after the race, which coincided with my need to return home. So hopefully it will open up for the runners here in the days after Tarawera, and they'll be able to stick around for a couple of days, put their feet in the lakes, have a couple frosty cold ones, and enjoy the glory of their 100K journey. And we should say, of course, the 100K is the premier distance, but there are many races going on this weekend, including the 100 miler, the Mila, as they call it, and the 50K. We'll do a quick bit on the 50K later, but more or less we will not cover the 100 miler. Moving on to the contenders. Tim, you took the words right out of my mouth. What I think it would be interesting to just discuss briefly and just like kind of contemplate the golden ticket series in general. And what you brought up, Tim, was exactly what I was going to say, in that this is the easiest race for regional athletes of Asia proper, whether Japanese, Chinese, etc. It's much easier for them to get to Tarawera than it is to Black Canyon or Canyons or Chianti, etc. So we're going to start talking about some of the contenders here, but it also, a lot of American athletes are also going over. It does introduce the Americans to a different racing dynamic and different characters in the race. I don't know if there's anything you want to build off here, Tony, before we start getting to some of the specific athletes in the field. But to me, that's one of the things that is interesting coming into the weekend, especially in contrast to Black Canyon.
I mean, when I was thinking about this, and we had that great RCI 3, RCI 5 yesterday kind of graphic that we were looking at. I think historically, a lot of us did view Tarawera as sort of like that early season cherry picking. It's like if you found that gem of a for sale by owner house that wasn't listed on Zillow, and you just showed up and you knocked, you're like, hey, please take my money. I'm moving in. It's a lock. And I think that now it's not so much the case. And it's, I was going through on kind of developing my list of runners, and a lot of my contenders do come from that area specifically. And we have quite a few Americans, but as you said, the barrier to entry is much higher. The travel, the lodging, a couple of our Americans are now freely unsponsored. So it's an even higher investment to get over there and kind of, lock up your ticket to Western states.
Dani, anything you want to add there?
No, you guys hit the hammer on the nail. Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so get us started on the women's side here, Dani. Notable scratches before we dive in. Tony McCann, Jade Bellsberg. Dani, do you have any color on Tony before we dive in?
Just shifting some things around. This race for, anybody comes up quite fast. And if you aren't quite feeling all cylinders are firing to be running this fast this time of year, it's always good to just shift gears. So yeah, she's all in good spirit. She's healthy. And we'll probably soon release what she's kind of shifted gears to.
And also, Dani, you informed me the news on Lin Chen, which is something that we've been wondering now for a couple of weeks. And I actually haven't passed it along to Travis yet. So you might be breaking news to Travis and also the global trail running community here. What's going on with Lin Chen, who is showing up on both start lists?
Yeah, I'm sure. I got a couple of texts trying to get some clarification. Finn was hitting me up the other day too. Is she what is she running? But yeah, she chose this race, which we just spoke to it. I think for athletes coming from China, Japan, it is a great pick. And on top of that, she's incredibly fast. And so, I mean, just to dive a little bit into her, she won the Kodiak 100 miler end of last year. She also won the Canyons 100 miler, and she actually had a spot into Western because of her Black Canyon experience or run earlier in the year. And it was actually her Poison Oak at Canyons that took her out from Western states, which was such a bummer. Just like one of those things as Americans, we kind of not take for granted, but most of us know how we react to it because we're exposed to it. We know what to buy at the store. But poor Shenlin, she went back home and didn't know how to quite treat it. And so I'm really, really excited. She's definitely one of my top picks going into this weekend at Tarawera because I think all of us were heartbroken when she had to drop out of what was a great debut due to a big blister on the bottom of her foot 2 years ago. And it's kind of left us all on the edge of our seat, like, what can she do at Western States? So I'm really hoping she gets a golden ticket here.
Yeah. Her story is yet to be written at Western States in the way that she wants it to be. And the first step to getting back, of course, is to get a golden ticket at Tarawera this weekend. Another name that was also on both start lists, Jade Belsberg, the great Canadian athlete who had a fantastic season last year. I think she was actually 20th in Trail Runner of the Year, voting very hard to crack the top 20 of that vote, and a very good all-around athlete. Jade has, it seems, opted to do Black Canyon. So Chenlin doing Tarawera, Jade Belsberg doing Black Canyon, though their names did appear on both start lists. Okay, diving into the women's contenders here. We got to start with the returning podium. Ruth Croft, Caitlin Fielder, Beth McKenzie. Tim, take this in whatever direction feels right.
Well, I'm glad you broke that news because now I have to rewrite my entire, prediction model. Because I, on good authority, I thought Corinne had told us that Chenlin was actually going to be in Arizona, but maybe I just misread that. So the returning podium, I think the three of them have some of the most experience at this race. Like Ruth has 3 titles. She's not going for the 4 in a row the way Dan is, but this would be her 4th title. Caitlin Fielder was only 6 minutes behind Ruth in 2025. We know that she has her spot locked up in Western States already from her top 10 finish last year. And then Beth McKenzie, she is, I believe, a 3-time golden ticket potential earner, but was not able to receive them given her, history of serving a sanction back in her triathlon days. But these 3 women coming back, you got to imagine that it's just going to be, they're going to basically run back what 2025 looked like. Ruth needs a ticket. And so when if I rephrase all that, Ruth needs a ticket. Caitlin Fielder does not need a ticket, and Beth McKenzie cannot take a ticket. So those 3 women, though, I would imagine are going to be the ones dictating the pace throughout the entire day. Beth admitted on your podcast that, she felt that maybe she gave too much real estate early and kind of learned a lot from last year's, addition. So I could see her being in the mix even more or sticking around longer. Caitlin, I think what I take from Caitlin is, other than her Templier win back in 2024, which she admittedly did beat, 3, pretty big names in the sport with Sylvia Blondin and Jennifer Lichter. I think Caitlin is missing that marquee victory. And so I would love to see her really kind of stick her nose in this and take a chance the way we were talking about some of the athletes at Black Canyon, where they can take a little more risk because she knows she already has her spot secured at Western States. Ruth is one that she is such a consistent champion. I don't see her missing. You anyone listening, I would just do yourselves a favor, go to fantasy.freetrail.com and type in, or go to athletes and then type in Ruth Croft and scroll down. For the last 13 years, the woman barely misses. And so you can't count against Ruth in any scenario. But I think Ruth also wants to defend her title here. And so I think those 3 women are going to be the ones kind of duking it out. But with Chenlin in it, now that we know that, she's one that wants to get back. And as you guys said, her story is still unwritten at Western States. So and we'll get to the others. But that's how I see the top 3 kind of dictating the pace out there on a Saturday.
Danny, so Tim has established that Ruth Croft, Caitlin Fielder, Beth McKenzie. Caitlin doesn't need the ticket. Beth can't receive the ticket. Ruth, at least according to her when I last spoke to her, is unsure whether she would take it. I don't know if you have any inside info or if you want to begin to think about who those tickets might roll down to, assuming these podium contenders might be able to match their performances from last year.
Yes, that is currently still the same status quo. Ruth is still unsure, which is honestly very exciting that it's not a plain no. Having just chatted with her and she said, I'm okay to share this. Like, she's just going to see how she feels after the race, which is really exciting to know that it's not completely off of the table. But yeah, I couldn't agree more with those 3 returning. And honestly, Shenlin is a very, very aggressive racer, so I wouldn't be surprised if she even took out the pace. She seems to only have 1 pace. But yeah, potentially who it could roll down to, a couple women that I have highlighted on my side. First and foremost, I actually wanted to highlight Honaka Akiyama. She's a Japanese athlete. She was 12th at the long trail at Worlds this year, 9th at the long trail in Innsbruck. Anyone who's repping top 15 at any of those world championships is always one to watch. We have our East Side representation, Katie Asmuth, coming off a win at the Javelina 100K. If Western States was a female person, it would be Katie Asmuth through and through. The woman just loves the race, has been dying to get back in, had a couple years of injury. And, since then, she's just been shooting her shot, trying to get back in. And so it'd be nice to see her up in the mix. Someone who has been on everyone's potential Strava file of the week radar is Lucy Bartholomew. It's been really cool to see since she has switched coaches with Jason Koop, like at least from an outsider's perspective, it seems like they had like a 2 to 5 year plan. Like when they first started working together, they were a little bit more conservative, and each year they've been adding more and more to her plate. And she's been moving up those race results again. I can't imagine she's showing up here not wanting a ticket. And last but not least is Juliet Sewell of New Zealand. She was 6th here last year. And if anyone remembers, the golden ticket did end up rolling down, and it actually came down to a sprint finish on the women's side. They didn't know that they were actually sprinting for a golden ticket. But, when you look back retrospectively, you're like, oh, dang, that's who it ended up rolling down to after Helena Faulkner. So you never know. So if I was just out of the ticket, I'd be coming back pretty hungry.
Great summary there. I just want to add a couple of things. First, on Ruth Croft, before we move too far off the great Kiwi champ, I had the honor last year being at Tarawera to hand out the golden tickets to Western States myself. And of course, having that responsibility, of course, I took it very seriously, and that I was determined to peer pressure Ruth Croft into taking her golden ticket last year. And she was very definitive. No, I'm not going to Western States last year. So the fact that she's even moderately interested, to me, it's a different disposition than she had last year. And it means it's at least more promising that we might see her on the start line there in Palisades top.
Yeah. Dylan, you might have to work on your peer pressure skills because you're 0 for 2. Ruth Croft and Poopy last year. Neither showed up. You got to have a different pitch.
Giving him the hard sell. At least Poopy is in for sure here in 2026. You mentioned Katie Asmuth, of course, the Mammoth Lakes local. I think you guys both have the pleasure of interacting with her often. She's a fantastic person. And she posted something that I think is worth sharing with the audience here. Number one, she and her husband, Pete, had their honeymoon in New Zealand many years ago, and they named their son Noah, which was a Maori word that means a freedom from restrictions. She posted this on YouTube. So she has this cool personal connection to the place. She, her husband, and her 2 children are all back there to watch mom race. And the race coincides, get this, with her 40th birthday. She's running the 100K on her 40th birthday. Happy birthday, Katie Asmuth. We love you. We hope it's a fantastic traverse there in the North Island. I wrote down also, Lucy, she's maybe the most experienced trail runner in the race. I mean, maybe second to Ruth Croft, but not by much, but she's still only 29 years old. And we'll all remember, or at least people who've been around the sport for a while, remember when she was third place at Western States back in 2018, and she was like off the front before Courtney passed her somewhere around halfway. And then I think Caitlin Gerben was the one who caught her later on as she was fading a little bit, but still a previous podium finisher at Western States when she was in her early 20s. She has been back. I think she struggled to a finish in the teens somewhere and then also DNF'd. So I'm sure she would love to go back to Western States and duplicate that podium performance from way back in 2018. It's great to see Lucy Bartholomew like back with a capital B here leading in to Tarawera. Anything else on the women? Go ahead, Tim.
Absolutely. And it's fun. I was at Ultra Trail Australia in 2017 when Lucy won the women's race and I won the men's race, and it was her 21st birthday. And, you know, we're now pushing 9 years later and she's back. She's so back, which is awesome. She is definitely a fan favorite. You know, when you look at the depth of these women lined up for a potential golden ticket, you know, I wrote down 5 of the women that we just listed have run Western States. 4 of them need entry back into Western States. If you take the top 3 runners in this field, their average Western States finish is 17:29, which before the last couple of years, that was a like perennial winning time. Giving Katie Asmuth like a shout out. The year after Ruth won, she ran 24 seconds faster than Ruth and finished 4th. Now, granted, it was 80 degrees and Ruth had to contend with, I think, 95, 96 degree temperatures, which is classic Western States up and down. But it highlights how every year we talk about, you know, the times are getting faster and then they do. And I just think it's going to be neat to see this race in Tarawera because so many of these women legitimately want that spot where sometimes we have seen it kind of float down to that 4th, 5th, 6th spot because someone just says they don't. And Ruth is the wild card, but I hope that we can work to her because it would, I think, you know, when you look at what she has won in this sport, it's almost every single race that she has ever entered. It might take her 2 years, but normally not more than 2 years. And that's what happened at Western States. But I would say, and I'm going to bait her a little bit, Ruth, I think you can run a lot faster than 17:23.
She knows she can.
So we want you to come out and take another crack at it, Ruth.
Yeah, and again, yeah, great point on Katie Asmuth. And Danny, I love your description. If Western States was a female person, it would be Katie Asmuth. She's a 3-time top 10er at Western States, desperate to get back. And after she ran that historically fast time that only got her 4th place, she was unable to return the next year due to injury, and she's been trying to get back to it ever since. So good luck to Katie. Let's see if she could get that golden ticket and then get her 4th top 10 at Western States. It makes me wonder who the male embodiment of Western States might be. We can all contemplate that together and maybe have an answer by the end of the show. Moving on to the men. Before we do, again, a big thank you to ACG for supporting our coverage throughout the week. I just wanted to flag something here that's cool that's going on over at the Olympics right now. For those who follow Mental Athletic, a very cool sort of endurance-focused print magazine, check out mentalathletic.com. ACG is doing a cool activation with them over the next 3 days starting tomorrow. So Wednesday, North America and European time, where they're doing these sort of like indoor backyard races where people are going to run 15K on Wednesday. I think it's 50K on Thursday and then 100K on Friday, an indoor closed course. And the 100K, you have to run 666 laps. You can check that all out at mentalathletic.com, and it will be live tomorrow over there in Milano Cortina and the Olympic Games, which I haven't been able to catch up on at all. I've been too busy getting ready for this double golden ticket races. But as we said in the chat, hashtag better than Boston, hashtag better than the Winter Olympics. Moving on to the men here. Some notable scratches include Eric LiPuma, an American, Rui Ueda, and then breaking news here. I just got confirmation from the man himself. John Ray, unfortunately, is not going to be stepping to the start line. I don't have his express permission to share, why, but seems like he's okay, but he just didn't make the trip, and we'll miss John Ray on the start line. So LiPuma, Rui Ueda, John Ray, all scratched off your fantasy docket. I don't know if you guys want to touch on any of those names before we get into it, or just the pain of
just like,
drops?
yeah, I'm both John, or at least Eric, like he could be pivoting, so we'll see. And then yeah, just like shout out to the other athletes. John, I was really looking forward to watching him race. I definitely have a soft spot in my heart for athletes who've had some injuries back to back. So just hope he's okay and can't wait to see him at the next start line.
Tim, have you ever had to do that? Actually, you were a late scratch at Black Canyon.
So maybe just a couple weeks ago. I think that I really appreciate when an athlete makes a decision that is in their best interest, and it can be increasingly hard to do this, especially given the nature of we're listening through all of these incredible runners that are lining up trying to get a ticket. Some of these are sponsored, some of them are not sponsored. Athletes put a lot of pressure on themselves, but that you also start to feel these external pressures. And often that can lead to us making decisions that aren't inherently the best for our short-term success. And so the more I see an athlete make that conscious choice to actually pull themselves out, regardless of what it might mean in the short term, I applaud them. And I think Ruth embodies that better than anyone. She is literally pulled out of, a UTMB race days before when she was a favorite because she was sick, where a lot of us, myself included, would start and not have the maturity or, even the heart to make that decision. So, it's a bummer to see these athletes, have to make that pivot. But, someone like LiPuma, who has had success at Canyons, I think if it is, a refocus, that could be a good move for him.
Dude, you're just reminding me, what was that quote, that brilliant quote that you had at UTMB? One year you said like, I didn't have the courage not to start. Like you knew you shouldn't have, but you just couldn't get yourself not to step to the start line. That's a pretty profound sort of lesson and teaching here on the show here. Tim's transcendent truth comes in the middle of the show rather than at the end. I appreciate that.
We got to surprise and delight the audience. But, if you do like make that internal choice or with your team, and you recognize that like the stronger and the more mature choice is to pull the plug early, the people that really care about you will still be there. And that includes sponsors and agents and coaches and teammates, but it can be very hard to see that in the moment.
Awesome. All right. Launching into the men now that we all have full hearts and total enlightenment with our athletic careers. Can't go past the 3-time defending champ here, Dan Jones, the Danimal. Dude is an absolute machine. Watching his performance last year, as I mentioned on last night's show, was truly insane last year. Danny, I know he's a teammate, he's a friend. Want to get us started on Dan?
Dan's just a great guy, and similar to Ruth and Caitlin on the women's side, he is the New Zealand pride and joy, or at least one of them. And when I was really diving into his performance to get ready for the show, and I compared it to Black Canyons last year, I really think his performance was overshadowed. Just naturally, that tends to happen. But what he did mostly by himself on that course, I think is going to be difficult. Well, it's a different course this year, but also just with the conditions. But the man is always ready to go. He already has a spot in Western. And so I'm just excited to see where he starts this year.
Awesome. Tim, assuming you don't have anything to add, I think the interesting thing here is you look at the start list. So the top 2 ranked athletes are Petter Engdahl, then Dan Jones. So Petter slightly outranks Dan. I think a lot of people who look at the start list view it as maybe a duel between the two of these athletes. Of course, there's a lot of others who can contend for the victory and certainly for those golden tickets. But I think it is kind of an interesting duel between these two teammates. And of course, Petter is a Swedish Scandinavian athlete. He's sort of coming to Dan's home turf to do battle there in New Zealand.
Yeah. And this might be a better matchup that a lot of us thought could have happened at the 2024 Western States, where Petter was debuting and he rolled his ankle, as we remember, just on the other side of the escarpment. He still, muscled his way into a 13th place finish, but it was far from what he thought, or I think many of us believed was possible for him. And so this race could serve both of them well. And, Petter is fresh off of, a 4th place at OCC, where he was only 5 minutes behind Jim. Then he was 6th at the long trail. The kid has some wheels. sticking it to Dan on his home turf, I think this could be a fireworks show. And what Danny said, or maybe it was one of you, but I think historically, Tarawera, very much like Lavaredo, does get kind of overshadowed because it falls on the same weekend as maybe, Black Canyon and Western States. And so here in North America, we have a bias towards what's happening on the continent. But this should tell everybody, you should be paying attention to what happens in New Zealand the second Saturday of every February from here on out, because it will be an absolute dog show. The one thing that I wrote down was, there are 7 runners in this field that have run Western States, much like the women. 6 of them need a spot back into the race. And if you take the average of the top 5 times that they've run at Western States, it's 15-15. Wow. This field is stacked with people that have run Western States, and they've proven that they can run Western States. They all are trying to get back into Western States. And one thing that I think is fascinating, I would hope all of our audience knows who Dan Jones is, but I almost feel like he's this generation's Seth Swanson, where he's put up some of the absolute best times at Western States. But like Danny said, with the races being kind of sometimes in the shadow of another race, he ran 14:23, 14:30, or 14:32, 14:36. But those were days that people ran significantly faster than him. So he kind of got lost in the mix.
Podium with those times,
which is wild.
4th and 5th. It's insane, man. Tim, amazing statistics here. You're putting Travis on the ropes here, throwing the analytics into the chat like that. Danny, I want to come back to you and have you give some color on Petter. And just to tee you up here, Petter, will remember, was the CCC champion in 2022. He ran 9 hours, 53 minutes. He's the only person to go sub 10 hours on the CCC course. Astonishing time. Travis and I were talking today. That performance from Petter earned a 947 performance index from ITRA, 942 from UTMB. For reference, Jim Walmsley's world's performance from last year, which is the highest ever, was 970. So it's, in the ballpark with Jim's performance, Petter's CCC, that is. Travis and I were talking today, and Travis brought up the fact that in the game of chess, when you're referencing your best ever game, you call it your immortal. So for Petter, CCC 2022 was Petter's immortal. Danny, Tarawera is 100K. As CCC is. The courses are a little bit different. Again, Petter's one of your teammates, one of your buddies. You got any color on the great Swedish champion?
Well, first off, I think that CCC, it'd be interesting to see it get indexed nowadays, because it's very clear that the finals have a little bit of an inflation, just my own personal opinion on that. But people should not forget Petter is also a podium finisher at OCC, a podium finisher at Mont Blanc Marathon. He ran a wicked fast Eiger 50K, which no other runners have even come close to that. And that's a very fast course. And the kid has a lot of grit. His comeback at the Canyons 100K 2 years ago, most people were writing him off halfway through. And then who comes and snags the last golden ticket? Petter. And I just think this is a great matchup between him and Dan. And, often when we have our team camps, it's them two and a couple of others who are leading all of the speed workouts. He is a fast guy. It's tough when Dan probably knows these trails like the back of his hand. So it'd be interesting to be in Petter's shoes and decide, when do you move? Do you try to catch him off guard? Do you just follow him, potentially try to outkick him? So I'm very interested to see what the tactics are going to be between these two. But yeah, I think it's a great matchup.
Great point. And Travis did have the wherewithal to throw Petter's immortal in the chat here, so people can go look at it on Strava. Just a sick file. Our today's honorary Strava file of the day was Petter's 2022 CCC. Super interesting. And he does have a documented VO2 max that's 92 or something like that. So a great character for our audience to pay attention to this weekend. I wrote a couple of things down here. We've got a great Chinese trio on the start list here. And then we've got a solid group of American men, even with that late scratch from Eric LiPuma and John Ray. Tim, you maybe want to get us started with one of those two groupings of athletes, Chinese and American?
Oh man, I want to go with our American boys. However, I got to give some love to Shen, who is one of the Chinese athletes. You know, we can remember that he was 8th at UTMB last year. He is an Ultra Trail Australia champ. He was 2nd at CCC. He was 4th at Western States in 1519 back in 2023. And then he was 8th at Western States in 1509. So he's a certified hitter. And I also, while I was doing a little background on him, I texted you earlier, Dylan, that like I forgot that I had raced with him at Lavaredo back in 2019. So I feel like, you know, kind of doing backstory on this entire show has made me feel older. And then I'm seeing all these runners that like we competed with still crushing it. And, you know, Ruth and Lucy and Shen. But I think Shen is one that wants back in States. I think that this is a good, a race for him. I think that I would not be surprised for him to sneak onto that 3rd place on the podium, you know, if it does end up being Dan and Petter, but he also could be in 4th. And depending on how the tickets are allocated, I think that he could end up getting it. And I would love to see Shen back at Western States.
Danny, you want to build off Shen or the other 2 Chinese athletes before we hit the American boys?
Yeah, I'm really excited about Ken Hualao. I hope that's how you say his name. He was 12th at CCC and 5th place at Black Canyons last year, which we know how much of a heater that was. And the fact that he's coming from China, like, to me, he's my dark horse. Like, I think he's going to sneak into that 3rd place. I think CCC, especially last year, just like it is a runnable race relatively. But yeah, I think he is definitely one to watch. And then another Chinese athlete is Ji Dao. He's a Hoka athlete. He was 4th at UTMB. I personally don't think that's as translatable straight to a Tarawera 100K, but as we know, fitness is fitness and grit is grit. So I think he's also going to be in the mix there with Can Hua and Jia Shen. And just from like a cultural standpoint, I'm interested what that group does versus Dan Jones and Petter, like who is actually going to be taking the pulls and the reins. And then one more international athlete I want to highlight is Janusz Kowalczyk. He's a German athlete. He actually was 10th at Western 2 years ago. And he unfortunately couldn't reclaim his top 10 spot after getting injured. And so I know he's just dying to get back in, but he has some great wins over in Europe at the UTMB Istria. So I'm excited to see him. And he shifted from Javelina to Tarawera. So one of those choices, you know, a couple weeks out, decided to shift here. So I'm excited to see him.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Janusz, and Shen is the same. And we mentioned Katie Asmuth earlier. So noticing a little pattern here, all 3 of those athletes did have spots to Western States in the last few years based on finishing in the top 10, and ultimately had to relinquish those spots based on injury. So Katie Asmuth, Shen Jishen, Luo Canho, probably all, I'm sorry, Shen Jishen and Janusz Kowalczyk all probably hoping to avenge those poorly timed injuries that kept them out of their rightly earned Western States spots. I think also worth mentioning, like Luo Canho at Black Canyon last year was in the mix for the golden ticket. He finished 5th, but ran the 7th fastest time ever at Black Canyon, 7:36 there last year, less than 5 minutes off the golden ticket. So narrowly missed it. I'm sure he's going to be hungry. The American boys here, just to list off 3 names here to focus on: Cole Watson, Nick Handel, and Jacob Banta. Nick Handel, Jacob Banta, more dark horses than someone like Cole Watson. Tim, maybe get us started on this trio.
Sure. So Cole, he has done Western States, and what I think it's 3 times now, with his highest place being 9th, running 15:54:36 back in 2023. He is freshly unsponsored, which means that he's going to be hungrier than ever to kind of prove he is still a legitimate threat in this sport. He also is someone that is very sneaky fit, and he comes from a collegiate background on the track. And I ran a turkey trot with him where he just casually ran like a 31-minute 10K, and then 12 minutes later ran a 14 55K. And it was just kind of like almost off the couch, but he's been putting in some really good training over the last, 2 to 3 months, coming back from a full kind of injury laden 2025 season. And so I think while he may not have any of that like impressive Strava art or hero workouts, like what we said yesterday on our show, singles and doubles will get you back into states often. And I think that Cole is the embodiment of that. And as we were thinking about maybe the male equivalent of, who like a Katie Asmuth, like Cole cares about Western states as much as anybody. And so he definitely is one that his whole heart is in this race. And if it doesn't go well, we will see him at Canyons. Nick Handel is a name that a lot of people may not know, but he recently crushed the Quad Dipsy course record last November. So a couple months ago.
For 11 years, I think it was.
Yep. And so, Nick is a guy that also he's got a big boy job and he has he's basically solving the world's problems in the technology space, but he then silently comes out onto the trail scene and just absolutely slays. And he has had some pretty good results, including a 13th place finish at CCC. But I think he's one that has never truly realized his potential, especially on the international scene. And so it would be really neat to see Nick stick it out here and have a shot at Western States, because I think it could serve him very well over there.
So good. Dani, anything you want to add here before we start moving and winding down?
Just shout out to Nick Handel, because I first learned about him in 23 at OCC. He was the 10th place finisher at OCC, the only man in the top 10, and he's been showing up, and I think he's really, really good at mountain marathon type distances, aka Broken Arrow, OCC, obviously Quad Dipsy just recently. So to
Mammoth
choose a really, really fast 100K, it's just I'm so excited to see how that goes.
Yeah, so good. He's a Marin County local. He lives in the city, but I actually we had lunch on Saturday after the SFRC group run. Dude is super fit. So we'll get to our predictions later in the week, but Nick Handel, look out. In fact, the cool thing that ties all three of these guys together, Cole Watson, Nick Handel, Jacob Banta, all unsponsored, all hungry, all ready. Jacob Banta, also a Marin County guy. He actually got 7th at Tarawera last year, so he's experienced on the course. And I haven't seen him in a little while, but people who train with him here locally said, dude is also fit and ready. Got to give a couple of shout outs to some of the local shredders. Michael Voss, super fast Kiwi, Max Janzik. Don't know these guys, but their reputations precede them, especially with those who attend the big friendly every year, mate. And then a couple of Aussies, Vlad Ixel, Charles Hamilton, Aaron Smith. So you can see all these names at fantasy.freetrail.com. Go pick 5 deep for the Tarawera 102K. As we begin to wind down here, Dani's going to say a few
Sorry,
words.
I have one more thing.
Go ahead.
To say. I just want to point out, obviously we're super hyping up our boy Dan Jones and Petter, but Dan Jones already has a ticket, and Petter very clearly has said he's all in on UTMB. So for those gentlemen that are racing, it's not over till it's over. So just all the way to the finish line, especially that we've learned in recent years with 2 tickets on the line. And you just never know what's going to happen. So Petter very, very obviously said he's not going to accept it. So we'll see. Whoa,
breaking news here. That sort of answers a question that we posed last night too, Tim. And what a strange season Petter's building for himself, because we'll also remember 2 weeks ago, we talked about how he's on the elite pro start list at the Boston Marathon. So he's doing Tarawera, then the Boston Marathon. And then I think Corinne said that he's planning to do Transvolcania, and then no Western states, even if he gets a golden ticket, and then potentially UTMB. Interesting season for the 92 VO2 max Petter Engdahl. We'll see if he sticks to that after. It'll be Kerry Meng, the assistant race director of Western States, who will be peer pressuring with the golden tickets this year, given the fact that I stayed home. Anyway, great little news there as we wind down here, Dani. And before we wind down, you did want to do just a very brief, 50K preview. Again, we're not going to do a lot of coverage on this, but we like a lot of these races now, and Black Canyon's the same. The they're becoming multi-distance events in Tarawera. It's no different. So what do you want to say on the 50K, Dani?
Yeah, I'm just really excited with all these 50Ks that are adjacent to the golden ticket races. I think they're getting more and more competitive. I think Black Canyon is just a couple of years ahead of Tarawera, but I could definitely see this one continue to get quite deep. Some shout outs on the women's side. We have Robin Lesh representing Ultra. She was 7th at CCC. I really think that should be like shouted from the rooftops a bit more. That was an incredible day for her. We have Louise Pinhote. She's a teammate of mine. She was recently 3rd at Le Temple 28K. Was injured most of last year, but she's super, super speedy. Previous top 10er at OCC. And then potentially to challenge Katie Asmuth for the embodiment of Western States, we have Emily Hawgood, who is going to be in the 50K, which I am very, very excited about. It seems that every year, Emily and her coach Paul kind of like are open to just taking different approaches for how to get her prepped for Western States, as that is the goal year after year, because she's always in the top 10. So seeing her jump into this competitive 50K is really exciting for me. And then on the men's side, we have Liam Miro. He was signed up for both Black Canyon and Tarawera. I don't know if that's just like the sexy thing to do right now, is to drive all the media crazy and sign up for both races. But he is made it very clear he's showing up to Tarawera, and he says he's super fit, has focused more on speed. Can he challenge Hayden Hawk's record? It will be very interesting because Hayden had Robbie Simpson, and we all know when you race, it's a bit easier to get those faster times because you just turn on your competition brain. But I'd love to see him go out and swing and see what he does there. We also have local Charlie Hamilton. He was 3rd at the UTC T55K end of last year. He's been 2nd at this race before. And a big group of New Zealand men, including Jack Harris, Sam Rout, Jonathan Jackson, all who have previously been in the top 10 at this race. So yeah, I'm really excited. And I do want to shout out, just so people know what the course records are that we're looking at. Hayden Hawks ran 3:18.46 last year. And then the current female record is from Allie Mack back in 23 with 3:43.38. Kind of like doing my quick napkin math, these are both really, really stout early season 50K records if I was like trying to race it. So someone's going to have like a great day to be challenging these times.
Yeah. 3:18. Again, I was in the 50K last year. Hayden and I had a little gentleman's bet. I spotted him 45 minutes to see if he could beat me plus 45 minutes, and he did, unfortunately. But I'm staying home this week just to train. Okay. So Hayden, Tarawera 50K next year, you will beat me by less than 45 minutes. I'm calling it now. Anyway, Dani, thank you for that 50K preview quickly as we close. And as we wind to a close, we are going to bring in a very special guest here on the Tarawera preview show, to our producer, Ethan Voss. Who is this guy? It looks like blue skies down there. Ryan Thrower. Kia ora, mate. How are you?
How's it going? Good. Yeah, it's cicadas are pretty loud. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's the finish line right there, and then the lake's right over here. It's a summer day down here, man. It's 80 degrees.
Okay, so this is our boots on the ground chief New Zealand correspondent here. They're on the shores of Lake Rotorua, beached as they say there. Ryan, give us the quick Lord of the Rings update from your trip.
Yeah, so we were in Rohan yesterday, went to Edoras, the capital of Rohan, and went to Arthur's Pass, I think either that morning, and we got torched. I forgot about, how intense the sun is down here. But yeah, we did some missions that Ruth recommended for us to do. It's been great trails, good Lord of the Rings sites. Now we're in the North Island, and it was not very summery down on the South Island, but, more summery than Seattle. And here it's great. You can see they're building the finish line, which is awesome. And they have everything kind of just, setting up mode. But it's great seeing athletes doing, shakeouts and stuff right now, zipping around town.
you want to give your fans a little BTS as to what the next few days look like for you? I know you're doing a little shoot with Ruth later today, and then what's happening on race day?
Shoot with Ruth today, and then kind of going around filming a bunch of B-roll tomorrow, and then race day. Going to be making a little highlight recap of the race, the 100K, which will be really interesting. It's like 1.5 inches of rain, a bit different than last year. So going to have to figure that out. But kind of going around to the course today with Ruth just to do a shoot. But yeah, race day video, and we have a guy called Henry shooting photos for us, so that'll be great. But yeah, kind of same thing as last year, only going to be torrentially downpouring.
Fantastic. So for those watching, make sure you smash the subscribe button so you can see the beautiful highlight film that Ryan makes from the Tarawera ultramarathons here in 2026. Dani, Tim, any final closing comments or questions for our special guests here before we wind down here tonight?
Man, I got so many things I want to say to our boy but he's not on the ones and twos. It's Ethan's doing a fantastic job, but we miss you, dude. And will you put in a good word for us with Ruth? We're trying to court her back into states, and we hear that she might be on the fence. So maybe just slip her a little note that says, will you be our runner this year?
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
So you and Carrie Meng, we're counting on you to peer pressure heavily at Tarawera.
Yeah, definitely, because it was kind of tough last year, peer pressure on the people here. So, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see about getting Ruth in. I'll subtly bring it up tonight when we're shooting, see how it goes.
Subtle. Groovy, buddy. Well, thanks for being our chief New Zealand correspondent here today and through the week. We'll check in with you again, I think, in our instant recap show on Friday. But also, like, how professional are we now, Ryan?
I know.
A live show with a scrolling caption here on screen. We have 2 people in Mammoth Lakes, myself in Marin County, and you in Rotorua, and we somehow are all broadcasting onto YouTube right now.
How far we've come.
How far we've come. What a perfect place to close. Dani, anything you want to say here as we wind down to a finish?
Just super excited for the weekend. Don't forget to check out Freetrail Fantasy. You can vote 5 deep. And hopefully some of our intel helped you out. But yeah, just excited to see who gets tickets and who's going to accept them.
Yes. Okay. That's our show here tonight, folks. Thank you so much for watching. This is so fun. Again, this is day 2 of, I think, 6 in a row. We'll be back here tomorrow night to do the same thing for the Black Canyon 100K. Before you go, smash the subscribe button if you don't mind. Play fantasy, like Dani said, not only for Tarawera, but for both the Black Canyon 100K and the 50K also. If you didn't catch last night's show, the top 10 storylines, go back and watch or listen to that. We do post all this stuff in the podcast feed as well. Thank you to All Conditions Gear. Go grab yourself a pair of that ACG Ultrafly, Radical Airflow. The new Zagama shoe is also really, really great. AllConditionsGear.com. We got new merch in the Freetrail store. I think Dani might be rocking one of the crew necks right now. Yeah. Shop.freetrail.com.
Sweater.
Yeah, sweaters. So good. I wish we made it for men. Anyway, big thank you to the team who put the show together here, especially Ethan Vosberg Productions. He built me this amazing studio in my backyard. Ryan on the ground, Harmony, Travis, who play such key roles in making us capable of these hilarious and amazing shows, and keeps us all employed and having a great time. Best sport ever. On behalf of Ryan Thrower, Dani Moreno, Tim Tollefson, I am Debo. We'll see you back here tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Peace.